Well, welcome to Getting There with Amy Claire. Today we have Ella Dahana. Welcome, Ella.
Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. How are you? How are you right now, girl?
Right now, I'm feeling pretty content at the moment.
Yeah?
Yeah,
How's
thanks.
life?
Life is fine.
Yeah.
Yep. Nothing crazy going on. But yeah, nothing exciting if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, that's
But
totally valid.
yeah, we're all allowed periods of, I suppose, quietness, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Just for the listeners, would you like to introduce yourself in your own words?
Yes, so I am Ella Diana. I was born and raised in Streatham Hill in South London. So I was there till the age of 15 years old, and then my parents moved to Surrey, so a tiny little town called Cheam. 90% of the population are over the age of 70, so very exciting. So very, very different to Streatham Hill indeed. Um, I then went to university, did a business degree for 4 years, graduated in July, and I went to a graduate scheme for a company who I won't name due to certain reasons. So I did that for 6 months, absolutely hated it. And I'm now a headhunter in London. So I specialise in hiring technological executives for disruptive software businesses.
Ew,
I
what a
know.
fancy term.
Yeah. So that's it so far, yes.
Fair play. As just for the listeners, because they don't know, Ella was actually in my year. I too graduated in July. So I've known her for a couple of years. But what I'm learning from this actually is that because we got on really, really well,
Yeah.
we actually don't really know that much about each other.
No, we don't.
So this is going to be a very interesting
It is.
podcast.
Lots
But
to learn.
I absolutely know it's going to be a funny one.
Is it?
Yes, because Ella's got a great character.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
So, I tend to only go for friends that, if they have great characters.
Aw,
So-
thank you, Amy.
But, but this is going to be definitely an insightful thing for me, and I presume for you as well, because we're going to be talking about all sorts. So,
Yeah.
okay, Ella, so going into your first event, starting secondary school, so we're done primary school now.
Yes.
We're going to go straight into this kind of area of your life. Tell me about that, like what that was like for you starting brand new school.
Okay. So a little bit of background to that. So my parents actually put me into a private primary school, from the ages of 4 till 10. So I lived in not the nicest area of South London, and the primary schools were pretty much awful.
Right.
And they were very aware of that, so they kind of got as much money as they could to put me through this private school. And obviously when you go to a private school, you meet very different people. You meet people of a whole different calibre of life who's come from completely different background, very privileged, very affluent. So when my mum and dad, they couldn't put me through secondary school, it's extremely expensive, and we had an okay secondary school about 2 minutes away from our house. So
Okay, yeah.
it was a smart option to go there. So going from a private primary school to a secondary school which was state funded, and I was how do I say this? I was the only posh one in the nicest way
Right.
possible.
Yeah.
I spoke well, and the other students, they didn't get that. They didn't warm to me, and it was very hard. I was bullied, not in a physical way at all, but I was, people would shout "posh girl" at me, and when you're 11 and you've never ever been, you've been at a very posh school for the past 8-10 years, when you go to a school like that, the changes are, I had no idea how to handle it. People would shout things at me. I would come home crying after school every day. So that was a real life changer for me, for sure.
Can I ask, in primary school, because there's actually a few things I can relate to here. In primary school, did you feel really comfortable there then? Or did you still feel like you were slightly like an outsider? How would you kind of describe that?
I absolutely felt like an outsider.
In primary school as
Yeah,
well? Okay.
I don't think I realised it until the time, but I remember my mum once telling me a story. We always had the smallest house out of all my friends. We lived in a small apartment whereas all my friends had these massive 3-4 story houses.
And they're totally... Because the kids are innocent, but sometimes we can be conditioned to think that this is normal or that's normal.
Yeah.
So then that pressure, that social pressure, and
Yeah. It was I felt like I didn't feel like an outsider until I actually realised that I was very different from the rest. Like my parents, they're not necessarily educated, they're in the creative fields.
Love it.
Yeah. now it's a great thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was lots of executive parents there.
So yeah, okay.
And I remember my mum always being really embarrassed me bringing my friends back to my house. Which now I think of it's quite sad, and some of the mums would make comments at these charity events and stuff like that. But I had a great time at primary school, absolutely loved it. But yeah, that changeover to going to a secondary school was nothing that I would have expected. And it took a good year to figure myself out and meet. I was very protected, as a child, so having to actually walking to school by myself and meeting new people that come from different leases of life, that was incredibly life-changing for me, and something that I will take with me for the rest of my life for sure, because you learn to deal with different people in different ways.
Definitely.
But that lasted. I was thrown into the deep end for a year, with students who didn't understand me, and I was ashamed of talking, pronouncing my T's. I would start to say in it and a, which wasn't me, but I wanted to fit in. And then it only took a year, and as soon as I started year 8, I loved it. I love secondary school so much. Best years of my life for sure.
That's insane. It's actually a few things you said. I mean, I mentioned already there's going to be things, even though we know each other, we perhaps don't know each other. But even the bullying thing, this is a big and very important topic, so I'm going to go to that just slightly, if you don't mind. I had a similar experience, not in the same way, but it's fascinating you said that, in terms of you felt like, an outsider, and even though people might think that you don't, you can. So yeah, even at the same age, I was bullied as well, but obviously in a different way. Yeah, but mine was for my image, being too skinny and chopsticks, they used to say it and stuff, and but that almost became a normal thing. Did you find that for you, even though it really affected you, that you almost became immune to it? Like, and sometimes, I mean, everyone has different experience with this, but did you almost accept that, oh, this is what it's like, and you thought there is another way? Did you think, no, do you know what, this is a temporary thing and this is totally going to go away?
I think it was, for me, I knew it was going to be temporary. I think I knew I had to accept the trust of these new people. And some of them now are still my best friends to this very day. So it was me getting used to that new environment and them getting used to me, really. So yeah, I had a great time at secondary school. And it taught me a lot. And I always say to any of my friends, I would always send my kids to a state school. I would never send them to a private school. I think you learn things. I respect if you want to send your kids to a private school, 100%. But having seen both sides, I think you learn things at a state school that you just cannot learn at a private school. So yeah, it was great.
No, that's, yeah, I think a lot of kids can relate to that. A lot of people can relate to that, because as I say, everyone has different experiences. I went in very positively into secondary school as well. I thought, right, fresh start. So yeah, but that transition, it's a big thing for students, because there's that element of the unknown, isn't there? You just don't really know what to expect. So then into your second event, actually, because this goes in quite nicely. You said moving to a completely new area, doing your GCSEs. Okay, so this goes into that, but you had no friends and having to direct myself down the right route in terms of A-levels and universities. So can you just give me an elaboration on that?
Yes. So when I was 15, like I said, I was very happy in secondary school. And with my friends, I had a friendship group, and we all lived, roads away from each other, 5 minute walk. My parents decided that they want to move out of South London into Surrey, into Cheam.
Right.
And that completely changed my whole world. And it induced a lot of stress and anxiety. That, looking back, is probably one of the key things that's actually brought me to who I am today, for sure. I fought as hard as I could to stay in South London. It's when you're 15, the thought of getting 2 trains to see your friends is daunting. I couldn't just go to my friends after school and come back. I'd have to run home for the train. So I refused to leave school because I loved it so much. And then it got to the stage where I'd have to take 2 trains to get from where I live now in Cheam to school. And the train, so I had to go to Clapham Junction, and then from Clapham Junction to Streatham Hill. But there was a 2-minute period where I'd have to run for my train.
Oh my goodness. Any delays is just stress.
Yeah. And if I was late, teachers don't care if you're late for school. They put you in detention. They don't care why, do they really? So I mean, my mum tried to call the school and say, look, we live an hour and a bit away now. Is there any way she doesn't get detention if she's late? But no, they weren't having any of it. So I got into this weird period of anxiety where every morning when I was on that train, I would check through the train apps just to see if I would make my train on time. And I became completely obsessed with it, to the point where I would actually get off at Clapham Junction and walk, because I would leave my house 2 hours early and walk from Clapham Junction to Streatham. It would take me an hour, because I could not deal with the anxiety of missing my train and being late.
Every morning.
Oof. And it got and I was exhausted, and I stopped seeing my friends, because I had to get home. I had to run home and get the train, because if I missed a train, I'd have to wait half an hour at the train by myself. So yeah, that caused a lot of anxiety for me. I just remember being on the train with my phone, just checking the apps, refreshing, seeing if I'm going to make it, and just thinking of what I would say to my teachers in the head. Getting used to get heart palpitations while I was on that train.
And at that age, it's anxiety. It's almost kind of unknown, and especially when we were that age, I suppose. Now mental health, thank God, has been kind of talking about, if I can actually speak, talking about, I've got my own new language now, guys. It's been spoken about more, which is good, but at that time, I personally found that it was only kind of starting to come in. And so what I'm curious is, because you said you were like, I don't want to leave your secondary school, you really enjoyed it. I can imagine being 15 or whatever it is, you kind of, again, it's survival instinct. You want to be in those groups. You want to be a part. But what was your biggest fear? Why you were I cannot leave this school? What was the biggest fear for you?
I think it had something to do with having that big shift from being in that private primary school, and actually that massive shift from changing schools.
Yeah.
I was pretty much scarred from it, because in year 7, that the change of going to a new school, having to make new friends, it took a year to get over the anxiety of going to school and who am I going to sit with at lunch. That took a long time. I didn't want to do that again. So it got so bad that I couldn't get on a train. I stopped going to school because I didn't want to get the train. And so after that year, so I did that from year 10 to 11. And then I thought, that's it. I have to move schools. I can't do this for sixth form.
Yeah.
Because I can't even get on a train anymore. So yes, that is when I changed to a new sixth form here. Which, if I'm honest, I hated it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I didn't enjoy my the schools was good I was in, but it was my experience too of we call it 5th and 6th year in Ireland. Okay. It's kind of AS and A level here. Same thing, just so that's a lot of people can relate to that. But Yeah, you didn't enjoy that, and I really actually genuinely want to know about that. But one thing I just want to go back on very quickly, if we jump back, is
Yeah.
do you mind if I ask how it affected your friendships with the other school when you stopped going to school?
Yeah.
Because I too, when I
Yeah.
was slightly older, say 17, 18, I stopped going to school for a bit as well, for my own reasons. But I'm just curious, how did it affect those friendships with your
Yeah.
in the
I mean, massively. I'm friend. I had a friendship group of around 4 to 5 girls, and I'm in contact with one of them now. And they were friends that I went on holiday with. We were inseparable, and it completely changed everything for me. Not having that, it's when you're young, and at that point social media wasn't a massive thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So you couldn't connect as easy as you can now. And in fact, I resented my parents for it massively because I lost a lot of my friends. And at that age, you're very cliquey, and as soon as you're out of the clique, you're out. So yeah, massively, and obviously that brought its own anxieties. If I couldn't go out somewhere because I knew I couldn't get the train home, I would sit out, I would sit out in my room and cry. And yeah, I had massive resentment for it, and I still to this day blame my parents for losing those friends. But
they had to do what they had to do.
yeah, I have to do what they have to do. And at the end of the day, if you're going to be true friends with someone, you're gonna, it's
Make that
meant
effort,
to
yeah.
be. Yeah.
Did you go to an all girls school, or was it a mixed school?
No, it's mixed.
Oh, was it always mixed from primary all the way up?
Primary was all girls.
Ah,
Yeah.
I see. This is
I
another
should have
thing.
mentioned that.
No, it's absolutely fine. I asked because I currently like teach around the UK, but more so like mental health and well-being stuff.
Yeah.
But I see, obviously I've gone in private schools, public schools, so I'm curious because I've only really been, I went to an all-girls school for 1 year, but
Yeah.
I've only been really in mixed schools. So how did that affect things?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question actually, which is probably why I found it so hard to transition in my first year of secondary school.
New added pressures from the
Yeah,
boys.
boys. I think it took me 2 years until I thought, oh my god, boys, and yeah,
Cooties.
and lots of my friends from my primary school went on to only girls secondary school, but they were connected.
Okay.
So I was still in contact with them, and they didn't understand that dynamic either. But going to a mixed school, it was some of the things that the boys would say to us. It's one of those things that you think about now and think, wow, that is so bad. I actually remember boys in my class asking me to touch their ding dongs.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
How old was this?
I was 12, 13,
What?
I know. I could it was bad. But at that time it was all jokey.
But then it's an insecurity, I find, isn't it? There's just almost like this kind of, people are growing up, but then they're peer pressure to do this. Oh yeah, go ask that girl to do that. And deep down, actually most of them don't want to do it. But it's that Did you find there was a lot of peer pressure for you growing up then? Or did you find because you were going for your own things, you kind of ignored that? How did you find peer pressure?
What peer pressure in terms of boys and...
Well, there's different levels, because sometimes obviously it's like physical appearance, or sometimes it's to grow up faster in terms of boys, or to be a certain person. Or did you find, no, I'm going to be truly myself?
Absolutely not. I was not myself at all.
Right.
Absolutely
How
not.
so?
100% peer pressure.
Yeah?
Without a doubt, yes. Me and my friends used to slap on as much makeup as possible. We'd have our horrible patchy fake tans with our skirts up to our... skirts up to our, as short as possible.
Those that Maybelline mousse stuff, do you remember?
Yes. We used to put it on our lips as well, if you've ever done that.
Oh my
Concealer
goodness.
lips.
I don't...
That trend
used to
needs
do
come
that.
back.
So...
But yeah, I was as soon as I hit 13, 14, I was obsessed with boys. And, I started getting boyfriends, and you start, comparing notes with your friends, and you do have to, and you feel like you have to compete with them. And I'm guessing the only reason we did that was to look good for these boys, because, I think that was it. Everyone, it was, I was shocked about how young relationships were forming. At that point in my life, people were having sex in my school at the age of 13.
Lord.
I think even younger than that.
Yeah.
And I remember very clearly I was seeing you can't even call it 12, 13-year-old relationship seeing. I was talking to this boy who at that point, I think I was 13 years old. Obsessed with him. We went to the cinema and we started texting about sex. And I remember my mum found a text on my phone.
Okay.
She just went ballistic. And I didn't even know what sex was. I had no idea. So...
Is this term that just came up?
It's literally this term that comes up overnight and then suddenly it's everywhere, really.
Did you find, because obviously you said there was anxieties you had and stuff and, this transition from one school to another. Did you find that you used boys as a distraction from those anxieties?
Yeah, for sure. I'm scared I'm confusing the listeners. We'll keep going back forward.
No. Honestly, this is normal conversation. This is what happens. But as I say, I don't plan any questions and stuff for this. This is why that's why I like it. It's just a normal conversation.
Do you know what? I've always used, till very recently, I've always used men as distractions from the age of... I mean, I didn't actually suffer with severe anxiety until I went to sixth form.
Okay.
So boys were a distraction. I just think I wanted attention when I was young. So from the ages of, when you start fancying boys, say 13 till my first boyfriend at 15, I just wanted the attention, and you want the stories to tell your friends.
This is so common.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been to one school where I haven't. You can see it. You can literally. So this is why I'm intrigued.
Yeah. No, it definitely since I went to sixth form and my anxiety got so bad because I was in a new area with new people I didn't know. Boys were definitely a distraction for me, which made it quite toxic. So,
and you said then, sorry to because I know I obviously got you to jump back there. That's when I'm curious, I ask.
Yeah.
You were mentioning then, if we go back forward now, lol. My terminology today is on point. Sixth form. You said now you were talking about that earlier, just so before I jump back.
Yeah. So
that's now a different transition again. So yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah. So as I said, I went to started sixth form, and I need a big part of my anxieties in sixth form. So it's a cute story of how I met my best friend Holly.
Okay.
On our first ever day of sixth form, I was running for my bus, and this girl was on it, and she stopped the bus for me. She saw me running, and then it just happened that we were going to the same sixth form on our first day, and she was from an outside school as well. So it was great. We were very, very cliquey, and she was my protection always at sixth form. When you meet new people, and I could always do that with her. So we would meet new people at sixth form together. We would go to, parties together and stuff like that. And then at the end of my first year of sixth form, she left. And I was by myself.
Wow. Okay. I was about to ask, how do you think it would have been if she wasn't there? But you already.
And do you know what? It's really funny because she still tells me that she has anxiety dreams over it. That she has anxiety dreams over leaving me. It's really bizarre. But and then I met a boy at sixth form who changed my life and my perception of relationships and men massively.
In a good or bad way?
In a bad way.
Okay.
I'd say. So,
I'm sensing that perhaps you didn't realise it was in a bad way until some time later.
It's probably now think of it.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it was it was a massive learning curve for me. But so she left, and then I met him at sixth form. So I suppose I needed someone there with me. I'd met friends. I still have some of my good friends there. But I never had like a group of friends, I'd say.
Yeah.
One of my best friends now, she went there. So I'm very glad I went there, because otherwise I would have never met her. But so then I met the boyfriend, the first proper boyfriend.
Boyfriend number one.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you... I mean, you were saying obviously you had to direct yourself down the right route of A-levels and university. So there's two sides to this now. So you've got this new relationship.
Yeah.
And you said it's your first kind of proper relationship.
Yeah.
And you've learned from that. So I'm curious to know kind of what that experience was like for you.
Yeah.
Then also how it affected your education.
I mean, it's one of those things where, bearing in mind I've just been through the anxiety of having to move. So my anxiety was pretty bad, and I was going through, I had lots of therapy. I was having panic attacks. I couldn't go to our school assemblies because I couldn't be in a room.
I had these. It's so weird.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah. Palpitations. It's like,
Yeah.
It's almost like a nightmare land. Like I say, like a dreamland. I'm not sure how you find it.
Yeah.
When anxiety attacks, it's almost just like,
Yeah.
what is going on?
And one of the main things that I don't know if people realise, but when you suffer from really bad anxiety, you get very bad memory loss. And that for me was, I had a therapist a couple of months ago that I could not for the life of me tell him about one of the biggest parts of my life, this boyfriend that I had.
Right.
Because when you go through such like bad anxiety on a day-to-day basis, your mind just is full of mind fog. So it's still, lots of the stuff I went through with him it's still like I can't actually remember it, but I just know it was very bad. But yes, that, going back to your question, I keep going off. There's so many different roads.
But this is the beauty of it. This is the beauty. I mean, my middle name is digression. So listen, you do what you gotta do. Yeah. I let the conversation flow.
Yes. So yeah, I met this boy, and then I was very unsure on what I wanted to do.
Right.
It wasn't really the known thing to do A levels and go to university. So I would say 99% of my friends, bar one, before I went to university, didn't go to university, didn't do A levels. I think barely even got GCSEs.
Right.
They did the more vocational subjects, which is what I was going to do as well. I was at that time, my first ever membership at a gym, wanted to be a personal trainer.
Oh, yeah.
That wouldn't have worked out well. but my luckily I had my mum was very good at making sure, no, like, you can do A levels, you can go to university, stay on that path.
Okay.
But I didn't know what course I was doing till the day I started university. So I had no idea that whole process was a bit of, I was basically scraping through because I had no guidance there. Not many people did A levels at my sixth form.
Yeah.
So and yet my friends, I couldn't really relate to them because I couldn't revise with them, which is quite a big thing you do when you're young, because they weren't doing that either.
So do you think if your mum didn't kind of like encourage that further, that you would have gone in a totally different direction?
Yeah, for sure. She very much had it in her head that she wanted me to go to university, which now I'm grateful for, because otherwise I would have never gone. I didn't have ambition at that point in my life. I was just trying to scrape through every day. So I didn't actually have any goals. I didn't know what I wanted to be, didn't know what I wanted to do. So there was nothing really for me to work for. So having this, doing all the forms for university.
Oh, it's a trek, isn't it?
It's a massive trek, and actually luckily the sixth form had quite good support for that. But yeah, it was hard because I didn't actually have that much knowledge. I didn't know what a Russell Group university was. I didn't know I had no idea what a good university was or what to aim for. They say Oxford and Cambridge, but from where I'm from in South London, they laugh if you say Oxford and Cambridge. That's not even a thing to think about.
So, do you think that's quite sad though?
So sad. So sad.
I'm sure there's so much talent.
Oh my God. I could go on about it forever, about that specifically, about how, young people are treated in these state schools. I could literally go, not that they're treated badly, but I feel like
looked at in a different light.
They're expected to do the bare minimum when actually they can do a whole lot more. And people with these schools, they just want to churn out results. They just want their minimum, 5 GCSEs. They're not actually telling these people, you can go to Oxford and Cambridge if you want. You can get, a web science degree if you want. These people don't know that they can do it, so they don't.
So guys, if you're listening and you're in a state school right now, work your ass off. Listen to Ella.
It's probably very different now, but yeah, back then, I speak to one of my good friends, who's in that, who I went to school with. He we had this exact same conversation, and he totally agrees with me that people aren't told that they're able to do more when they act. But yeah, it's a bit sad, but I suppose that's a whole different level of debate.
No, but it's really, that's a very, like, it's actually quite an imperative topic to talk about, because there will be people listening, and whether it be from the UK,
Yeah.
Ireland, or across the world, like, there's going to be people that, if it's not them, they will know someone that might be in this kind of position now. So that's actually quite inspiring to be able to go, yeah, look, you're in this position. Your relationship, so how did that affect, because you mentioned that you say you use boys as distractions, which is so common, by the way.
Yeah.
How did that affect things? So you're now an A-level in this relationship.
I became an awful person because of that relationship.
That's very honest.
Yeah. And it destroyed my confidence. It was a very, very toxic relationship. And I think the only saving grace actually was that I had very supportive friends that, I mean, I cut myself off from a lot of people, as I think a lot of people do in their first relationships. They cut themselves off because they're so infatuated by this person.
Yeah.
And I thought this person was, my absolute world. And we went on holiday together when we were 17. It
went quite fast then.
So fast. But it was the most toxic. We were disgusting to each other.
Really?
And we were horrible. And I became a horrible person to my parents. I didn't want to celebrate my 18th birthday because, I don't know, I just became an awful person because of him. I became mean. I would lie to my friends about, if they would make plans with me, I would lie to them to say I couldn't do it when actually I just wanted to see this boy because I was so scared of him like not loving me. I wanted to do whatever he wanted me to do, really, to make him happy. So there was
an insecurity there about...
Yeah.
Where do you think that, obviously if you don't know the answer to this, it's totally fine. Where do you think that insecurity stemmed from then, in terms of, you were so obsessed with him?
Yeah.
Was there a fear of, say, being alone, or... I don't know, really want to guide this in the wrong direction, but I'm just curious, because it's such a common thing.
No, it's a good question, and I think my insecurities changed a lot whilst I was with him, so it changed from one thing, so I didn't want to be alone.
Yeah.
I didn't want... I was so infatuated. The thought of him being with anyone else was one of the main reasons why I stayed with him for so long. And then it moved on to the whole... When he starts telling you, oh, no one's going to love you. You're not pretty enough.
He said that to you?
Yeah, he would.
Who am I going to go around and beat up?
So stuff like that, which... you take to heart, and then other girls get involved, and when other girls get involved, that's when it just completely destroys your whole confidence, right? As a young 18-year-old girl, and I'd actually, funnily enough, when you going back to the whole how did it affect my education, I actually picked, so I live in Surrey, I picked Surrey University as my top choice, because I didn't want to leave him, and my second choice was Southampton. And we'd actually broken up the day that we got our results to find out what university, and I didn't get enough UCAS points to get into Surrey, so I ended up going to Southampton, which it is probably the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Someone's on your side, girl.
Someone's on my side. I would have stayed in Surrey and not met the people I've met now, and lived at home, so not had that whole living away experience for this boy who was not too nice, but if I was a horrible person to him as well. We were as bad as each other.
What would you say to your 18-year-old self now? If someone's in this position now, what would you say to them?
It's not worth it. It's not worth it. No boy is ever worth the deterioration of your mental health.
And same with men.
Yeah.
Even if a woman was doing that.
Exactly. It's exact same. Yeah, it's not worth it. I always think, why did I stay with him I stayed with him for 2 years. And then we used to get back and break up, that whole thing. Until that finally at university, my housemates in first year. And
then she met me and everything got better. I'm just kidding.
I was on consensus for sure.
Just kidding.
But yeah, so...
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But your education side, so obviously... It was a journey. My God, it's definitely a
Massive
journey. But that is, I mean, so obviously the third event is actually leaving uni, but if we just go into uni very quickly,
Yeah.
what is very intriguing is you said you didn't know what course you're going to do until the
Yes.
first day.
Yeah.
So what made you say, did you pick business management? Guys, we did business management, that's why. Did you pick business management in Surrey as well? Because naturally when you do your UCAS and stuff, you have to write the personal statement and that. So what made you go around that route then?
I actually picked sociology to start with.
Okay.
And then went to my first lecture in sociology. I thought, oh my God, what am I doing here?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, in Southampton?
In Southampton.
Oh my
yeah.
goodness, I had no idea.
I sat down in a sociology lecture and it just wasn't for me. And I just remember going to the information services and thinking, what other courses can I go on? And Amy, you probably know this. Everyone does business. If you don't know what you're going to do, you do business. It's such a wide variety of topics and sectors that they cover. That it's it's a good option to take, guys. If you don't know what you want to do, business is the way forward. So yeah, I then moved into business. Yeah.
And geez, I mean,
And the rest is history, really.
during uni, because obviously I got to know you a bit there. But yeah, so you were broken up, and then you're now in this new city. You're away from everything.
Yeah.
How do you think things changed for you there, or what happened with? I mean, I'm not going to go into the kind of goss side of things now.
Yeah.
Just genuinely in terms of like, mental state, things like that. What had changed?
So I was in a better mental state for sure. I was still having panic attacks, but I was with really good girls. I was very lucky to be put in a house in first year with, 5 amazing girls who I'm still very close with to this day. So they were, and having people around you like that all the time, it positive people makes very positive effects on your mental well-being. So and they were very, very positive, and some of them also dealt with mental health, so I could speak to them about anything. I think first and second year were great for me. It barely, I think I got 43%, barely scraped through first year, nearly failed. I remember just sitting at the table thinking, I had to retake 2 of my exams in first year, thinking I'm not even going to make it through first year. And then second year, scraped, I think I got 55%, something like that, barely scraped through. And when it all changed for me is when I did my placement year.
Oh yeah.
And that changed my whole life. That changed my ambitions. That changed everything.
Same.
It's
I think I literally wish it was mandatory for people.
Yeah. Oh
I
my
really
God.
think it
if
should
I
be.
could give anyone advice going into university, get experience. Do it. Oh my God. So I went from doing 40% in my first year, barely scraping second year, and to getting a first in my final year, quite a high first, solely because of that placement, because it just put me straight into action. I was in an extremely corporate environment. I'm probably going off topic again, aren't I?
There's no such thing. No such thing in this podcast.
So yeah, that was. I nearly knocked the microphone over, guys. So
she's getting a bit excited now, lads.
But yeah, so my mental health deteriorated a lot whilst I was doing my placement year, because it was a whole different level of stress, and I think
different type.
Yeah, I was working in the city doing recruitment 7:30 to 5:30 every day, and it was all target based, and I hated it because it was very micromanaged. So we had to do 10 calls from the hours of 7:30 to 8:30. If you didn't do calls, you would get ridiculed. If you didn't make your targets, on every afternoon we'd all stand around a circle and you'd have to say your targets out.
What?
And if you didn't make it, they'd be like, well, why? Why haven't you done this? And you'd feel pure embarrassment.
Yeah, I mean, I was in sales, but it wasn't that wasn't...
Yeah.
That's almost confrontation, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
And I met some very difficult, very, people that I could not work with. Luckily, it was a placement, but it was, that for me put structure back into my life, which I really needed. Even though I hated it now, it was fantastic because
I totally agree.
absolutely fantastic about learning the corporate world and learning what work environment you don't want to be in. But yeah, it did have bad effects on my mental health. I actually got something called health anxiety.
Health anxiety. Do
Yeah.
tell.
It was bizarre. It was a bizarre phase. So when I started getting anxious, and this is very TMI, guys, so just warning you, for no apparent reason, I was on the train and I was reading an ad for a HIV, get yourself tested thing.
Yeah.
And I was reading the symptoms, and I read out the symptoms online on my phone, and that was it. I had it. In my head, I had HIV.
Right.
And I would get tested, and bearing in mind I was with the same partner I'd been with for a couple of months at that point.
This is a different guy for the same...
Different guy,
okay,
yeah. And I would go through I would have a full sexual health screening like every month. It just got so bad.
Wow.
And if you actually think about having to get that done every month, and everything would come out clear every time, but I just thought I had it. And that's when I started to get a different type of therapy called psychotherapy.
Oh yes.
Which was super, super helpful. But yeah, that was definitely, that was very, God, I'm mumbling now. That controlled my life, that health anxiety. Because I woke up in the morning with anxiety that I had it. I don't even know why it was, and it switches. So one time it would be AIDS, the next time it would be if I had a headache, it could be a brain tumour. If I was breathless, I would think, oh my God, I've got lung cancer. It was so bad.
Did you think the media and social media contributed to that by any chance?
Yeah.
Or what was that main source of... Because health anxiety is quite specific.
Yeah.
So what kind of triggered that, I wonder, or do you know?
Well, I think it's the fear of death is a
okay.
big one when it comes to health anxiety. Or like just the fear of not being fine, not being okay.
Yeah.
But
which so many people, including myself, can relate to that actually.
But luckily, as soon as I got back, stopped that. As soon as I was back at university, it was fine. I get really bad health anxiety when I'm put under a lot of stress. But yeah, luckily I had a good psychotherapist who got me through it. But yeah, that was really bad. And doing a bad job as well, not bad job, but being in a job which I didn't love as well.
But when you have targets, like for me, I've got performance anxiety.
Yes.
So for those who are like, what's that? Essentially, I'm fine with going outside the house and, speaking to people. That's like more social anxiety if people have issues with that. But performance anxiety is more anything that's graded, anything where, you've got a target or, you have to get a certain level of something, achieve something specific. I freak out. Like, true story with this. Do you know when we were applying for placements? So I was totally embarrassed because so many people were going, oh yeah, I've got through to interview. I couldn't even get through to interview because what happened is, those assessments, those really easy English and maths assessments, and I'm actually not being sarcastic there, most of them are pretty basic.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it because I saw a timer in front of the screen and I would fail the most, and I'm actually not bad at English and maths. I would fail the basic maths and English tests, and I couldn't tell anyone because I was mortified. The fact that they're like, okay, I've got through the assessment centre now. I couldn't even get through through the first round.
I mean, the pressure of getting those graduate jobs and placements, they were just awful, wasn't it? That was.
Eventually you get it, and even as you said, I definitely don't regret my placement because, oh my God, even some of the people like I'm really good friends with now.
Yeah.
But even though there was negative experiences, and it, like you said, I think my placement year personally was one of the most educational experiences of my life.
100% agree.
But you going, so for yours, obviously you had like those mental health issues at that time, because I can imagine for me it's this performance anxiety, you had this health anxiety. Yeah. That probably, going back to my initial point, classic Amy digressing, the extra added anxiety from, say, targets certainly surely didn't help.
Oh my God, no, that was awful.
Yeah.
I would have, you probably had them as well, the dreams of not, the nightmares.
Oh yeah.
Nightmares of not reaching your targets and...
I thought of everything I can dream over. I'm dreaming of blooming figures in my head.
Yeah,
I thought,
same.
Amy...
And having, I would just think on the train in the mornings, having anxiety, what am I going to say? How am I going to... What's my excuse this time?
Isn't it?
My targets?
Yeah. What's the excuse? Which is, it's mad because things happen. I suppose this is the most important lesson I'm getting from this, is that you just don't really know what's going on in people's lives. So,
yeah.
But what do you think of the corporate culture?
That's a very good question. I think there are different types of corporate culture.
Okay.
I worked for a very big recruitment firm, and the corporate culture was absolutely awful. Like, if you had to leave a minute early to go get a train to the doctor's appointment, you had to ask permission. That, you know, you're looked over a lot with the corporate culture.
Did you feel like you were like a child?
Yes, there was no trust. Absolutely no trust. And I'm very lucky in my job now that for me the corporate culture is one of the most important things, and now I'm in a job where, you know, my boss trusts me, and if you get the work done, you get the work done, which is how I work best. Different people work best in different situations. Definitely. For sure.
100% agree.
I know some of my friends they work 7 to 7 in that corporate culture, and they thrive underneath it. But for me, I'm more of if you trust me, I'll get the work done. And that's it. You know, if you give me a deadline, I'll do it. But I don't need someone to watch over me.
We are so similar.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot right here. I'm like, yes, she's like the same as me.
So, yeah.
During this as well, you said, because obviously you're going through a bit of a whirlwind, which, you know, to understandable looking at this.
Yeah.
It led to the breakdown of your 3-year relationship. So This is obviously a different relationship now to the one when you were in sixth form.
Yeah.
You said, luckily, you were able to find your way out of the hole. I was due to numerous life-changing factors. So...
Yeah. I'll try and cut the story down as much as possible.
Just go for it.
So, yeah, I met my last boyfriend at my second year of university. Typical Ella becomes absolutely obsessed. He is my life, my world, my everything. Typical Ella.
Did you just visualise the wedding already? Like
I was looking at rings after our first date. I do that though. And in fact, being single makes it even worse because I still fantasize about boys I literally meet at the gym once.
Really?
And I'm already like, wait, shall I plan what time I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow?
I wonder what our kids would look like.
It's really bad. So I met this boy on a night out, and we had a very turbulent relationship, but it was very loving and
different to the first one then.
Different, very different. And I loved him so much, and he had his own problems, but we were quite a good support base for each other, and we helped each other out on a lot of things.
Okay.
So for instance, he was quite bad with communication, I was quite good, so we helped each other out. And then I started, I could go on forever about our relationship, but I won't. But then I started a graduate job, and talking about corporate cultures, I worked for another big company. And I think, going back to your point as well, that pressure of getting a graduate job, as soon as I could apply for one, I was still in my placement whilst looking for graduate jobs. So as soon as I could get one, I went for the first thing that was offered to me, which is the worst. If I could give anyone advice, is not getting a graduate job is not the end of your life. Like, honestly,
take your time,
because I basically wasted 6 months of my life in this graduate job, where it worked extremely long hours. It wasn't mentally challenging me at all. You were very much a worker.
It's almost like another just number in the company.
Yeah, literally that. The turnover at that company was crazy, and I always thought, like, that's mad. They
Where's my bonus, y'all?
Literally. It was, the job was not great and had very bad effects on my mental health. So in fact, I went through a phase in my life. So I got this graduate job in June, and I was still with my boyfriend at that time. And after about a month, I stopped feeling anything. Excitement, sadness, love, laughter. didn't have any sexual desires at all.
Wow.
I stopped feeling anything, and I used to panic over it. In fact, the only thing I did feel was panic. I remember I used to come home from work on a Friday and sit down and like say to my dad, I don't feel anything. What's wrong with me? I do not feel anything at all. And it's a really scary part of time in my life, because when you don't feel anything, I didn't feel myself. I didn't know who I was.
Goodness, yeah.
And I was awful to my past boyfriend. I was absolutely awful to him. I shut him out completely pretty much overnight, and he was very much still in there, and I just shut him out. And so that complete, I'm not going to blame the job for the the breakdown of my relationship, because obviously it's deeper than that, but it definitely did. It basically I
affected things.
Yeah, I don't know if me and my ex-boyfriend now, we're moving on very different roads. So he's been in a long-term job for the past 5-6 years. He's a bit older. I'm still discovering what I want to do. So I think it was bound to happen anyway, us moving different directions. We moved apart, but it was the way I just managed to shut things off, like was awful. And so yeah, it was only until I actually quit that job in December when I was able to start feeling myself again, and actually my relationship broke down around September time.
Okay.
And I was able to actually feel upset that we'd broken up. It took like a couple of months for it to kick in.
And then that is an interesting one, because they say stereotypically, oh, the woman, will get upset first, and then a few months later, this is obviously stereotypical, and then the man will, but 2 months for you to really
we would
grieve, I suppose.
We went through this horrible stage of the whole breaking up and getting back together. I would say we weren't actually together from about June. So I remember I had a graduation party in July, and my dad was just like, he was my boyfriend at the time, so you didn't even look at him once, and at my own party. So that was when it was, and then we broke up, got back together, broke up, got back together. So I basically for 6 months hadn't grieved at all. Wow. Didn't feel anything. And yeah, I was going out, and in my single periods, I would go out, meet guys, and try to feel something, and I felt like just feel nothing. So yeah, in December, when I was able to, I had a couple of weeks to myself, kind of all came back to me, which was not the best couple of weeks before Christmas, because I was a mess, but
maybe it needed to happen.
Yeah, it needed to happen, and actually we both got over it quite quickly, because we knew we were going on different paths, and now we're on very good terms. So yeah, it was strange.
That is this is actually a really, really inspiring story in a way, because you've been really raw with it. And that's the truth of it, and these things happen. So looking back now, from all your experiences, obviously you've given some really good advice throughout.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, before I do that, because I always like to ask this question. Sorry guys, I jump back and forth. They're used to it by now. Your influences in your life, I know everyone has many, but in terms of getting you to where you are now, who would you say your biggest influences?
I'd have to say my mum's got to be one of my biggest influences. She's the reason why I have the work ethic I do now. She's always been incredibly hardworking, always done the utmost to support me. So I wouldn't have been where I am today without her, and my dad, of course. But yeah, she's been a great influence. I think one of my best friends, Holly, actually, she's an influence because she did things very differently to me. So she didn't do the whole A-level route. She went straight into work at the age of 16, 17.
Yeah.
And she's now got a house, and she's got a very good job. So, and when I hear her talking about her house, I was like, that I want that.
Yeah.
So, and
do you feel pressure from looking at other people then in different things, or you're right with things now?
I felt a lot of pressure. I mean, I used to put a hell of a lot of pressure on myself. I still do. I mean,
Yeah.
the pressure to look good, especially social media, doesn't help that, does it?
Okay, yeah.
But that's a whole different story. But I felt a lot of pressure. But my mum tells me a lot. Stop putting so much pressure on yourself. That you can't put a time on anything. There's not a right time to do one thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So when I see her in her lovely house, because I went to uni, I'm going to be 4 years behind her.
Yeah.
But
you have different experiences and you
yeah,
learn from different things.
But it's if she did it, and she's been in a relationship for the past 5-6 years with a lovely man, and that's what I aspire to. That's what I want.
Yeah.
So yeah, so those are my two influences, the two main women in my life for sure.
Oh, I like that. So looking back on everything we've discussed, I mean, there's some really good life lessons in there. What advice would you give those? Because I'm sure obviously there's different things people can relate to.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to the listeners if they're going through anything that you're going through, or even just life lessons in general that you've learned?
Don't put too much pressure on yourself. There is no direct definition of perfect. You do not need to be perfect at all. Someone will love you for whoever you are, and you do not need to mould yourself into what you think that they want. And I think my best piece of advice is, I think I mentioned it before, don't put time on anything. Everyone has their own route in life. Everyone does things differently. People change careers at the age of 40 years old. So just go with the flow, work hard, and enjoy yourself, and say yes to things. I used to say no because I was so scared of changing my routine. I used to be like, right, I need to be in bed by 9 because I need to have 8 hours of sleep so I don't feel awful. And even going out of routine would cause me anxiety. So I've actually started saying yes to more things. Like, oh my God, I can go out on a Wednesday night and a Thursday night.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to ruin my life, and I'm having fun. I'm meeting more new people just by saying yes. So yeah, say yes to more things.
I love that. Well, obviously, I mean, I could chat to you all day, but I just want to say, Johnny, thank you for being so honest with it, because I mean, from my perspective, it's an interesting one because I've known you, but clearly, as I said at the start, I clearly didn't know you as well as I thought, and that's probably a common thing. So a message I actually want to give out, I haven't really done this before, is guys, if you think you're friends with someone, sit down and actually just have a good conversation. Forget about competing against each other, forget about trying to look better than another person, get better grades than them. There's an element of focus on yourself. Yeah, just sit down with your mate and see what their life's at, you know what I mean? Because I've looked back at your life now, I've gone, we have so much more in common than I realised. You know, sometimes we always got on, but realistically we didn't actually know probably that much about each other. So this has been a very, very insightful thing for both myself and my museum.
It's been great. And I apologise for going back and forth. You know, when you speak to someone, you feel like you feel like they know your life when they don't.
Okay, my family are going to laugh when they hear this because that is something I do. They're like, Amy, focus on the point. There was a really funny meme I saw actually, and see, I'm digressing already, but it's basically about how normal people, how they communicate, and it's just pointing in one arrow how I communicate, and it's basically this journey of roadmaps, and the last point is apologize. So no, I think it's totally normal. Don't be afraid to digress, because I do it, and I used to be insecure about even me digressing, and but now I just gotta be myself and do whatever. But listen, thank you for your advice, thank you for coming on and talking about your journey so far, and I have no doubt, girlie, you're gonna fly it. No doubt at all. It's all right. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for listening. Adios, amigos.
Bye-bye.
See ya.